You are probably in a position right now where you know more than a lot of people kind of what's going on within the workplace. We're in a very different time right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. It's really changed the shape of the office place as we know it. A lot of companies are working with these new flex schedules where employees are, bouncing from the house to the office to, maybe even Starbucks nowadays, and, kind of doing this rotating work shift where, they're in the office for 2 days, they're at the home for 2 days, and then, they're out on the road for a day or whatever it is in that combination. But with that, a lot of employers are not providing desks or chairs for their, workforce at the home. So something that we've been seeing a lot of is, people with back and neck pain coming in, looking for a new chair because they've spent the last year sitting in their, dining room chair at the kitchen table working, trying to make it happen. Right. But, they're not really sure if they're going back or not. So sometimes they're not sure if it's worth making the investment into desk setup and whatnot. So, being an HR specialist, do you think that if companies are sending employees home to work, that it's important that they move forward and, get a setup, whether that's comped by the company they're working for? We see a lot of these companies are downsizing, getting rid of spaces. Now, instead of having, my cubicle and John having his cubicle, we just use the same cubicle and just share the space and switch off. And, they're getting rid of a lot of overhead that way. But at the same time, now I'm working from home at my kitchen counter. I miss my old office chair.
Right. So it's interesting. It's that hybrid world. So when we kind of shut the world down last March, they just sent everybody home. So when you were doing your Zoom calls, you were seeing a lot of kitchens and kitchen tables and dining room tables because people were also sharing space, right? Their kids were home, their spouses were home. So now that we're coming out of this post-pandemic, employers and companies really need to consider what were they giving them at the office that they probably should be giving them something at home too, because they're still their employees when they're sitting at home. It's workers' comp, right? So they get hurt at home, that's a workers' comp claim. So, and it's giving those employees, it's what's making you special and different as an employer. So if you're like, hey, we've got a setup for you that's maybe a rotation or a shared space at the office, but at home, we're going to invest in you and get you that desk and that chair that you need. First of all, because we value our employees and we want you to be comfortable, right? But some employers are just going to look at that bottom line. Yep. And injuries can cost you a lot of money. I actually talked to my friend Tom Gamond over at G2 Insurance Services, and he had an example of a wrist injury. Repetitive, it wasn't something like they fell, but repetitive, and let's assume it was probably from a bad ergonomic setup, right? $10,000 expense, and they lost their policy. They no longer covered them. So that was an example he had for me. So that's not good, right? And I'm sure a desk and a chair cost way less than $10,000.
Oh yeah, we can put something together way under the $1,000 price point for you. That's gonna, help prevent those workplace injuries. So that's something that a lot of people don't realize is when you sit for 40 hours a week, which is kind of the minimum for a lot of employees right now. A lot of employees at companies are working more than their 40-hour weeks due to the lack of employees at companies right now.
Yeah, there's actually a statistic out there that the average is putting in an extra 45 minutes a day.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're sitting more.
Very important then to have the right setup. I spoke with my good friend Nick, who's a chiropractor, my friend Sean, who's a PT, and they both said that they are seeing cases rise right now and a large number of people coming in since the pandemic that are having new back and neck issues. And I'd imagine, from a HR standpoint, that's all going to get linked back to a workman comp claim.
Yeah, well, not only that, it's going to cost you money, but now you have lost productivity. Yep. That person's out, they're going to see your friend the chiropractor and your friend the PT. They're doing that during work hours at workers' comp. So now you've got, an upset employee who's in pain, they're losing time, and they're costing you money. So
all things that we can avoid by getting the right setup.
I love it. Awesome. I love it.
Awesome.